Today, we may have found the jack of all trades. He's done stuff in the snowboarding industry, the medical equipment industry, he's done some commercial real estate, he's ran a flight school, he's created mods for motorcycles. The man might have just done it all. His name is Robert, how do you say your last name?
Bob Mighell.
Bob Mighell?
Yeah.
All right, Bob Mighell. I met him at a coffee and entrepreneurs type of event, and he showed me something that he invented, and I would love to ask him more questions about that and just kind of dig into what he has going on here. What are you doing currently?
I'm the entrepreneur in residence at the University of Oregon's Business School.
All right, entrepreneur in residence. What does that mean?
Well, basically in education, students can take a lot of classes on entrepreneurship or business in general, and you can study entrepreneurship and, study accounting, how to write a balance sheet and a profit and loss statement. And but what we try to do different here in the Entrepreneurship Center is actually, it's kind of fun for me to be kind of new to the academic scene, but the term is basically experiential learning.
Okay.
Basically, I think you can only study entrepreneurship so much, but the real importance is just getting out there and doing it. And our program, our flagship program we run here is called the Oregon Innovation Challenge. And it's where we invite students from all across campus who have either a business that they're already up and running or thinking about doing or want to get involved in a business, all come together. I work closely with the director of the program, Jeff Sorensen. He and I started this program about 2 years ago. They'd previously had small kind of business competitions, and the year before we started, they had maybe 25 or 30 students involved in their program. What we've done different, kind of reimagining entrepreneurial education here at the University of Oregon, is it didn't make sense to be, I guess the term is siloed within the business school. Because good business ideas don't just generate in the business school, they generate everywhere. And so what we did is we reached out to all the different departments and different schools across the university, including product design, music and dance, chemistry, computer science, data science. Rather than entrepreneurship being just in the business school, now our entrepreneurship program serves the entire university, including a lot of really cool things going on over at the Knight campus, which is the attached biotech center that was started up about 4 or 5 years ago with about $1 billion of funding from Phil Knight. So our first year of the program, we had over 200 students involved. This year we had over 250 students involved from 46 different majors.
Wow.
And so we're just really making some big changes here at the University of Oregon. And then kind of long-winded answer to get back to you, what is the entrepreneur in residence? My kind of role is, I'm not an academic, but I've been there and done that. I've owned and operated my own businesses for the last 35 years. I'm down in Eugene because I sold off my business to a company based here in Eugene, and we can talk about that later. But I offer that perspective to the students who actually want to get up and get something going. And I work with them just down to the nuts and bolts, how to get things set up and really take their ventures forward.
You said that you owned and operated your business for 35 years. What business was that?
Well, just kind of like a true entrepreneur, it's not just one, but a variety of businesses. So my first business I started up was directly out of university. I did my undergraduate liberal arts degree and a graduate degree in engineering at Dartmouth College out in New Hampshire.
Oh, wow.
And as an undergraduate there, my roommate and I were hardcore skiers, and there was this new sport that came out called snowboarding. And this was in the mid 80s. And the original snowboards were all designed by surfers and skateboarders, and they were just junk. They didn't handle very well on really hard packed snow or ice that they have out in New Hampshire. So we decided to design a snowboard along the lines of a ski and actually have a shaped snowboard where it actually has side cut to it. Because the original snowboards were shaped like water skis and they were a rounded edge, so you can't actually carve on those. The original snowboards was actually kind of a riot, actually had a rope that you held on in the front and you just stood on the board. There was no real bindings or anything like that.
Really?
So we started adding bindings. There was no edges. We added steel edges, all these things. And so that was kind of my first venture that I tried to get up and going. And I realized that I could be an engineer with a good idea, but I didn't really understand how businesses operated or ran. I didn't really understand the financial side of it, the marketing side of it, how to hire people, all that sort of thing. And we actually tried to raise money, and nobody would give a couple engineering students any money to actually build anything. And we were really almost too early in the market. Because when we were originally building these, I lived in the Seattle area. There's only one ski area in the entire state of Washington that would even allow us on the hills. Most of the ski areas treated them as toys. They wouldn't let you take a sled up a chairlift or an inner tube because the original snowboards didn't really have much control.
Oh.
And so that's what we were doing different. So it was really, we were really at the forefront, but almost maybe a little bit too early. And then, and that whole market did take off. But that was my first interest in it. I then went to go work for a medical equipment company for a couple of years. And because I'd done my undergraduate research designing instrumentation to put in artificial hips and knees. And so I was always really interested in the medical space. And so I started work as a manufacturing engineer. And my immediate boss, so I worked for them for a couple of years, and my immediate boss turned 50, and I was 25 at the time, and I had my midlife crisis. He turned 50, he was just in the next cubicle over, and I did a real self-analysis of, do I just want to be one cubicle over in the next 25 years? And
Wow.
The answer was no. I really had my taste of entrepreneurship with the snowboarding business, and that was really the path I wanted to go, but I knew where I was weak, and that was on the business side of things. So I decided to basically quit my great paying engineering job and went back to school full-time for my MBA at the University of Washington, which is, I am wearing a duck shirt now. So there you go. So I did my MBA there, ended up going to work for a medical equipment company after I graduated. Left that company and went to work for another medical equipment company that really was interesting and growing. But the owner wasn't really interested in seeing it expand. It was providing a nice income for him. He didn't really want to move it forward. I was a little bit frustrated. And so I basically offered to buy him out. And we worked on a deal, and I bought that company, renamed it, and it was called World Medical Equipment. And what we did is we outfitted operating rooms with major surgery room equipment, such as surgery tables, lights, sterilizers, anesthesia machines. Our special niche was that we would buy surplus equipment from large hospitals or surgery centers consolidating or closing down or just getting new equipment. We would take it into our facility, we would strip it down to the last nut and bolt, rebuild it from the ground up, and then sell it as used equipment, but refurbished to usually small rural hospitals or outpatient surgery centers all across the United States. And I ended up growing that company, which started out just as myself. And I ran that company for 20 years. That company grew to be on the Puget Sound Business Journal's list of 100 fastest growing private companies in the state of Washington for 8 of the 20 years that I ran it. Wow. Eventually we got up to about 25 employees. We were shipping equipment to 49 states all across the United States. And that was really a fun endeavor. And kind of while I was running that, also I had the opportunity to start up and operate a flight school. Got interested in aviation, and there was an opportunity at a local airport for a flight school that did aircraft rental, Cessna 172s and the like, and flight instructions for pilots. Ran that for a couple years, and I can highly not recommend aviation as a good business to get into for anybody. Don't know how many pilots came up to me and kind of kiddingly said, you know how to make $1 million in aviation? Start with 2. So that ended up getting shut down. Also did some commercial real estate. Ended up building my own commercial real estate building and leased that out. But I kind of got bored while I was doing that. I'd been doing the same thing for 20 years. Had gone to enough of the same nursing conferences. And so kind of on the side, I was always pursuing a little bit of a passion project was my motorcycles. So I'd been riding motorcycles since I was a kid, and was born and raised in the Seattle area. And 2 times as an undergraduate, I actually rode motorcycles from Seattle out to Dartmouth in New Hampshire. So one trip was straight across, the other one I circumnavigated the United States on a motorcycle. So been riding motorcycles my whole life, and also interested in fast vehicles. And so I had a sport motorcycle, BMW motorcycle, and then a Porsche 911. And I used to race around the backcountry roads with these vehicles. And I was trying to come up with a way to get a motorcycle to go faster and safer around the corners. And I always found my Porsche had a little bit of advantage over the bike, and realized what the Porsche had that the bike didn't was it had an additional wheel in the front. So under heavy braking, 70–80% of your weight transfers to the front of the vehicle. And so I got to thinking, well, what if you put another wheel on the front of a motorcycle? Could you get better traction while going around corners? Could you increase your braking capacity, which all adds to speed? And I realized nobody had done that before. So I had my medical equipment business. I took over one of the bays and just started a development project on just building a 2-wheel front end for a motorcycle that would lean and handle into the corners. I originally didn't know I'd never done a real development project like this, and wanted to build it, and knew pretty much that had an idea it would work. Like I said, nobody had ever done anything like this before. And so I was trying to figure out how I could get this vehicle made. And so I took the original idea up to Western Washington University. They had a vehicle design program up there, full machine shop engineering team. And I approached the head of the program up there to see if he would take it on as a student project. I'd mentor the student team, I'd pay for all the parts, everything. And he kind of listened to what I wanted to do politely and said, well, people have tried to build leaning vehicles in the past, and it's been proven unstable. So I'm not going to let my students take on a project that won't work. And I was slightly disappointed, but that was pretty much all the encouragement I needed. Just tell me that I can't do something and I will do it. And so finally I found a fabricator that specialized in building rock crawler trucks with super high articulations, and he could envision what I wanted to do with the suspension system. And so we started building the original first prototype. Not a single drawing exists for it. We just took a motorcycle, took a Sawzall to it, cut it up, started welding on different bits and pieces, made our own custom wheels, everything. And so the first prototype actually worked straight out of the box. The suspension system was horrible. And so I knew I needed to improve that. But at this point, it wasn't a business idea. It was just kind of just a fun project for me to just kind of let out some engineering energy. But then I took it to a motorcycle show. And the first time I took it out, I I wanted to go to this motorcycle show, and I thought, somebody might be interested in seeing this thing. I'm going to go park it, and I'm going to go look at all the cool bikes. So I ride this bike up, and I park it, and before I can even get my gear off, my helmet off, somebody comes over and starts asking me questions about this bike, and then somebody else, and somebody else, and somebody else, and I realized 6 hours later I'd never been able to leave that bike because so many people were interested in it. And that's when the little light bulb went on in my head. I said, I think I might have a business here. But there's a lot of mechanical issues with that first prototype. One being that I had so modified the bike, I had to take it to the state patrol to get it relicensed and re-inspected. And the very nice police officer there, state patrol guy, said, well, you know why you're here? And I said, well, I added a third wheel to this motorcycle. And he goes, well, not technically, because a motorcycle is classified as having 2 or 3 wheels. And I go, well, why am I here? And he says, well, you cut your frame. Mm-hmm. And I said, well, if I can actually make this a bolt-on accessory, he goes, yeah, then that would be fine. You wouldn't have to get it re-inspected. And so that changed the whole model of the business. Rather than build the whole machine, I could actually build an accessory. Then I had the second problem was figuring out the suspension, how to get in a working full suspension for this. And that one literally took me about 1.5 years to just mentally figure out. And then I built my next bike on a much faster motorcycle. And that kind of at that point, I decided to go ahead and launch that business and grew that company up. I ended up selling off the medical equipment business, went out on the fundraising circuit with the company which was called Tilting Motorworks. We ended up raising about $3 million through a lot of angel investors. Grew that company to a certain point. Actually ended up getting the interest of a company based in Eugene, Oregon called Archimoto. They also built 3-wheeled vehicles, but there's a 3-wheeled electric vehicle. The founder of the company there, Mark Frohmeyer, who I had met on the fundraising circuit, and he and I gotten to know each other along the way, decided he wanted to build an electric 3-wheeled bicycle, and he wanted it to lean. And he knew at this point that I had 3 issued patents on the technology that I had developed. And he, at that point, had already gone public on NASDAQ. Their company at that point had a $1 billion valuation. And he was looking at expanding his product line, wanted to build this vehicle. Said, hey, what would it take to get you to join with us? I said, well, Mark, why don't you just buy the company? He said, fine. So he bought the company. I moved it from just a little north of Seattle down to Eugene, started producing them down here, did the development work on the electric bicycle, which actually ended up working out really cool. And then Archimoto pretty much ran out of money. I was finishing up. A lot of times when you sell a business, you end up usually signing on a 2-year contract or something to transition the company over.
Gotcha.
I was finishing up that transition time on a contract about the same time they ran out of money. So I found myself in Eugene. But when I first arrived in Eugene, I was talking to my lovely wife and said, I really miss interacting with the students, because up at the Seattle area, I had been involved with the business school up there, the Foster School of Business, for 25 plus years, mentoring students, speaking to classes, business plan judge. But it came down to Eugene, realized I wasn't doing that anymore, missed it. And my wife was like going, well, there's a rather large university here in Eugene. And, being a Husky, it's like, yeah, I know, but. So I came over, introduced myself to the business school while I was still working with Archimoto, and started doing the same thing. And then about the time I left Archimoto, there's a new director of the program here at the Entrepreneurship Center. And he and I just really hit it off. And I was looking for something to do. And he said, well, why don't you come on board as our entrepreneur in residence? I said, that sounds like a lot of fun. And so here I am.
It's amazing. It's amazing. It's a lot of stuff going on in 35 years.
Yeah.
There's so many things that I want to ask you about.
Shoot, go ahead.
But one thing that I wanted to just touch on to start off with here is like you said you took your idea to a was it a college or university,
Western Washington University, yeah.
and they said no, we're not going to do that because that's not going to work. And you in your mind were like, well, that's all the encouragement I need is just telling me that I can't do it.
Yeah.
Where did you come up with that attitude, or where did you get? How did you come up with that thought process?
It was just a confidence that I knew I had it figured out.
Okay.
And I knew it would actually work. Just kind of a follow-on story on that one. It did take me about 2 years to build that original prototype because it was just something I was working on the evenings and weekends and stuff on. And so once I actually got it street legal, I actually called up the professor at the Western Washington University and I said, "Hi, do you remember me?" About that three-wheeler. And he did actually remember me. And I said, "Yeah, I was wondering if I could ride my street legal prototype and show it to you." And he was like going, "Sure, bring it on up." And so arranged a time. I actually rode it all the way up there. And when he came out to look at the bike in the parking lot, he was super impressed. And he goes, "Just wait right here a second." I was like, okay, that's kind of strange. He went without notice, interrupted 2 engineering classes in session. They stopped the classes and he brought the entire classes out to the parking lot and let me do a demo on the bike. And he was pretty impressed that I'd actually pulled it off.
So he still had a good attitude about all of that.
Oh yeah. Good. Basically, he'd said I couldn't do it, and I rode it right up there and showed him that no, you can do it.
That's awesome. So you say you had confidence at that point. Where do you come up with that kind of confidence? Because I feel like for me, when I was starting out, and I feel like a lot of other people, they deal with like imposter syndrome, or they think they have a good idea, but then they try to get started, and then it's like, oh, what am I doing? Somebody asks me a question, I'm not quite sure what the answer is. Like, how do you deal with that? How do you come up with that confidence?
Well, you just kind of become the expert in whatever it is. You go back to like the snowboarding, right? So basically with the snowboarding, it's a problem. Basically the problem is these snowboards that existed were junk in my mind, and they didn't handle very well. And so I knew that we could design something better because what we were doing is we were blending snowboarding technology, you stand on those sideways, you go down the hill that way, with ski technology. And nobody had really done that before. And so it just made all sorts of sense. And I didn't know how to build a ski or a snowboard. And we just kind of figured it out. The first ones were not very good and broke. And but then you learn and just keep going forward. Same thing with the motorcycle. I got some really interesting stories about crashing some initial prototypes because they just failed. And but I learned in that whole process on how to make things better. So I guess my encouragement is just if you think you're solving a problem for yourself, because like with the motorcycle, that was just a problem I was solving for myself. I didn't really know that there was going to be a market for it or anything like that. I just wanted to get around the corners faster and safer. But I built it, and the darn thing actually really worked. Yeah. And then the interest from people was really encouraging as well.
What's really interesting to me is like you went to school. It sounds like you get a degree in engineering.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you did that for a while. You worked. You had a couple jobs, and then you're like, well, I would kind of actually like to own my own business. So you went back to school. Kind of the thought process is out there of like, you know what? If you want to start your own business, don't go to school. What would you say? What would you say to those people?
Well, I mean, not go to school at all, like undergraduate and or MBA. It just depends what you need. I really enjoyed my undergraduate in that for me, it was a liberal arts degree, which my focus was, it's just a way to learn to critically think.
Oh,
not as so much each little class you're taking, but the whole process on how to think and write. That's super important to me. When I went back to school for my MBA, I did it. They talk a lot about going back to MBAs, and I'm a big, strong proponent of not going back for an MBA straight out of undergraduate, because you don't have enough work experience or life experience to then know what you don't know.
yeah.
It's just another classes. So I had actually worked for 3 years and also had that experience with wanting to start up my business. And I knew from that I didn't know about accounting or finance or marketing. And so I kind of went back focusing on those. And I really knew what I wanted out of the degree to do that, rather than trying to get a job in finance or try to get a job in accounting. And I was able to do it much faster with the MBA.
Yeah, the reason I say that is like some people, well, I've heard people say, the whole schooling system, it's set up to create employees, not necessarily like entrepreneurs. So like I don't know if it feels like so you guys have an entrepreneurial center here at the U of O, and it's like you feel like you're behind enemy lines at all, like trying to take people from being an employee to being an entrepreneur, or like is there any of that going on?
Oh, no, not at all. No, because certain people are geared for it and certain people aren't. And then what I think is really important, again, what we're doing here is a lot of people will read or hear about entrepreneurs and it sounds really interesting and maybe I want to be an entrepreneur. And what we do here is we offer them the opportunity to try it on.
Oh,
You think of yourself as an entrepreneur, let's start something. I don't care if it's making shirts with some sort of logo on there or whatever, or you want to build, it doesn't matter to me. Just something that interests you, that you're passionate about. Try to make it, make a prototype, try to sell them. Is that something that really fires you up? If the answer is yes, it's successful. If the answer is no, that's also successful because you were able to try it within a university environment, super supportive. You have people like myself, people, all your professors, everything, trying to help you succeed. And then the other thing that we offer at the University of Oregon as a plug for why you want to go to the University of Oregon is this program I mentioned, this Oregon Innovation Challenge. With all these student teams, we help them out, try to start up a business, and then we work with them and teach them how to like pitch your idea. And then they actually, all the teams will pitch to us. And last year, we were able to give out awards to 30 different teams of about $175,000 total. So you're thinking about trying to start up a business, we give you, like up to $8,500 to go ahead and pursue that idea.
yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
That would be a very helpful boost to somebody that's just starting out.
Right.
On a scale of 1 to 10, where would you say like your fulfillment center is, or fulfillment level is, as far as like your job now? Do you like it?
Oh yeah, yeah. No, I'm actually having a riot. I, as an entrepreneur, again, being my own boss for so many years, I was a little bit not sure about working for a university. I mean, this is the largest business, around. And so layers of bureaucracy, all this stuff. And I thought, I'll give it a try,
Yeah.
But we've just been having such great success with the program, such positive feedback from the students and stuff. We have a dean here who, the business school, has been super supportive of what we're doing. We get to work with amazingly bright students. Super fun for me to work with the biotech center, kind of getting back to my medical device kind of background. I was just working with a student today, a PhD student, who's doing an application for some sensors to put on bone plates to see whether knees are healing correctly. I visited the lab of another student who's developing, you're familiar with 3D printers?
Yeah.
Well, they've developed this 3D printer down there that is producing almost hair fine biomaterials that they can print, and they're printing little nanotubes. And what they're doing with these tubes is repairing nerves. So if you get a crushing blow to your arm, and they can screw your bone back together, they can sew your muscles back together. But if you've severed a nerve, a peripheral nerve, what are you going to do? They will grow, but how do you get it to grow back together? So what she's developed is this little tube, this little itty bitty tube that you put around one end of the broken nerve, and then you put the other end around the other end of the broken nerve, and then the nerves actually grow back together.
Really?
Yeah, so that was one of our student teams this year. So I'm getting to work with these students, and it's just it is very fulfilling.
That could affect so many people.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I have a cousin that he was taking his horse to water, had the lead rope around his wrist because his hands were cold and he wanted to put his hands in his pockets, right? The thing took off and drug him for a while, and pretty much it just took his hand off, and it was hanging there by a couple tendons, right? So they sewed it back together, which they didn't originally think they could, but he did say, I lost some feeling.
Right.
And so, wow,
So
that is amazing.
that could actually help somebody like that. Yeah, definitely.
So tell me a little bit about yourself growing up. Like, were you born and raised in the Seattle area?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What was it like growing up? Did you have siblings?
Yeah, an older brother, an older sister. My older brother ended up being a PhD astrophysicist and doing all sorts of cool astronomy stuff.
Yeah.
And my sister ended up being a commercial airline pilot.
Really?
Yeah. And so was my siblings. And my father, I grew up in my father was an Episcopal minister.
Really?
So you think, well, I decided not to follow in the family business. But I probably learned more from my father growing up about mechanical things, because he was the most mechanical person I ever met, and he could fix anything. And so I grew up working on Volkswagens. And our personal record time was backing the Volkswagen into the garage, and the engine was out on the bench in 45 minutes.
Really?
Yeah, so I just grew up fixing and working on anything, bicycles, motorcycles, anything. So actually I learned quite a bit from him, probably more from him than my engineering school.
Did he have any like entrepreneurial tendencies, or he was just very committed to, you said he was a minister?
Yeah.
Okay.
He was committed to the church. So,
All right.
but so I don't know how I came about that. That's just something I wanted to do.
What about your mom? Did your mom have any entrepreneurial tendencies, or did they encourage that at all at home?
Not really. I had a paper route when I was growing up and stuff like that. My mom, in that time in the 60s, was a stay-at-home mom and stuff. So, but she always encouraged me whatever I wanted to do.
What do you think? I was thinking about this interview earlier today, and I actually just interviewed like an 18-year-old that's doing real estate, and like he's been working on, learning about real estate since, I don't know, 16, 17. Like he's been at it for a fair amount of time already. I mean, for an 18-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
But I asked him, like, what could more people do, like in general society, people that aren't necessarily in college, what could they do to help students? What do you think they could do to like encourage that entrepreneurial spirit? Because
In themselves or in others?
in others.
I just help people out with ideas and encourage people. Yeah, I think you say, a lot of times people think, oh, I really can't do that, but yeah, you can. It takes more work than you think. It's going to take way longer than you think, and it's going to cost you a lot more than you think. But you just got to be really dogged about it and focused.
Talk about that a little bit, because like that, I see that in myself and I see that in a lot of other people today. It's like, I want to start a business, and in 3 to 6 months, like I want this thing to just like take off and just be very successful within a year, let's say. but you're developing prototypes for like 2 years, you said?
Oh yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, no, it was, oh my gosh, I can't tell you how many years it was before I ever made a dime off of the Tilting Motor Works.
What kept you going?
I was just having way too much fun. It was absolute riot to ride that machine. And I think I showed you the bike.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think after that I'd taken it up to Canada. I just came back from a 1,500-mile trip on one of my bikes, and I'm just in the process of planning another trip down to San Francisco. I mean, I just love riding those machines. I actually now have the bike of my dreams, but it took me that long to actually build it.
Huh.
Because it's a passion for something. You
Yeah.
know, money's important, but you got to really enjoy what you're doing. You know, if you're thinking you're doing something for the money or something like that, you may end up doing that and stuff. But you know, kind of get back to, are you fulfilled doing that? You know,
Yeah.
and whatever that passion is, again, it doesn't really matter. Kind of interesting. I have 3 boys.
Okay.
And I think it's my youngest is the one I would say is most entrepreneurial. But his passion is mycology, mushrooms.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And he's done all sorts of things in the whole mushroom world and stuff like that. But what he's done recently, it was actually really fun because he called me up over the weekend. And he goes, Dad, I remember you talking to me about something, and something really resonated with me. He said, I got to focus. And he said, I finally figured out what I'm going to focus on. And he's going to be making mushroom salts.
Okay.
And what he does differently, if you go, I don't know if you've ever used mushroom salts and stuff, but they're great. But normally, if you were to go right now and go buy a mushroom salt on the market, what they do is they usually take dried ground mushrooms and they mix it with salt, and you call it mushroom salt.
Okay.
Well, what he does different is he actually goes and forages for wild mushrooms like chanterelles and morels and stuff like that, picks them fresh, and then puts them on sheets of salt and then dries the mushrooms on the salt. So the salt actually absorbs all the mushrooms, and then he takes after it's all dried, then he grinds it all together. But the salt is actually embedded with the mushroom moisture. And it's incredible stuff. And so now he's going to actually focus on that. And then he leads mushroom foraging trips in the woods and teaches mushroom courses and stuff like that. But that's his passion, is mushrooms.
Yeah. Were you passionate about all the businesses that you either bought or started?
Oh yeah, it's just all kind of pursuing different interests. Medical stuff, you can just see when I'm talking about the student who's making those nerve guides. You know, that's just really trying to make a product that can actually make somebody's life better is always really rewarding. I ended up with the motorcycles. So I originally built it for the performance and safety aspect on it. I wanted to get around the corners faster and safer for me.
Yeah.
And then I found the demographic that was really interested in buying my motorcycles were usually older gentlemen that had problems holding a motorcycle up at a stop, because these bigger touring motorcycles can be 1,000 pounds. And if you've got a bad knee or a bad hip, you can't hold that motorcycle up with both your feet when you come to a stop. And so I kept having these guys come up to me and say, well, does this motorcycle self-support at a stop? And I go, well, no, it's supposed to lean in the corners. Why would I want to do that? He said, because I can't hold the bike up, and if it would, I'd buy it. And so listening to enough of that, I said, okay, well, let me work on that. So I learned all about hydraulics and electronics, and I built a hydraulic control system, all computer controlled. So as the bike slows down and comes to a stop, it'll actually lock up rigid, all 3 wheels. And the unintended consequence of this is that I got approached by a couple of motorcyclists that were disabled. And one gentleman was a former Army Ranger that had taken a bullet in the back in Afghanistan, and he was paralyzed from the waist down. But he'd formerly been a really hotshot motorcyclist, but he couldn't ride a motorcycle anymore. And so he got a hold of me and said, hey, would you build one of these bikes for me? And I said, well, we're still working on this. Because in my mind with that thing, if I built the bike for him, failure was not an option. Because if some system on this failed, he would just literally fall over. He couldn't hold the bike up. And so when I became confident enough, I said, yeah, come on down. We'll get one built up for you. And we built that bike for him, met him down in Tucson, Arizona. And the next day he actually rode it all the way home to San Diego.
Okay.
And he said it's just really changed his life and that he's able to actually ride a motorcycle again. I've had other customers, another customer just contacted me and said that he was going cross country, somewhere like in South Dakota or Montana, and hit a deer at freeway speeds, 160-pound deer, and he and his wife were able to walk away from that accident. He said on a regular two-wheel motorcycle, I'd probably not be here.
Mm-hmm.
So, making better lives for people is always really gratifying.
Wow.
But yeah, no, that's part of my job now is just kind of really encourage that next generation. If you've got an idea, you just have to kind of step through it, and but just give it a try. Again, with my original snowboards, I didn't know how to build a snowboard, but I got a hold of some people. They helped me out with the motorcycles. I learned so much. By that time, I was already, 40 plus years old. I didn't know anything about forging wheels. I had to actually figure out a way to actually custom make and forge my own wheel. Figure it out. Somebody can help you out, do it. There's a lot of people out there that have expertise, and if you approach it that you're actually trying to start up a business, especially young people, it's almost even easier. Because if you get an older person who has experience that you need to tap into, just asking them, and they're probably more than willing to help you out. Don't be afraid to ask for help.
Don't be afraid to ask for help. That was my problem when I first started my business. Is like, I don't know, there's like this, it's kind of like sexy to be, solopreneur, like grind my way to the top, stuff like that. But as I talk to more people that have been there and have done that, they're all like, no. Like one of the biggest parts of their success has been finding the right people and putting them in the right places.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, building teams is super important because you have to be realistic about yourself and your strengths. And the phrase I like to use is hire your weaknesses. So if you don't know enough about accounting, you need to find somebody who really does. Find that person who just like, if the books are off by a penny, that really bothers them. That person. You need somebody who's into the manufacturing or somebody that's really into that. And you find these different people. And it may be a task that you just want to, to tear your nails out rather than do, but you'll find another person that just absolutely loves to do whatever that task is. Partner up with them.
Partner up with them, yeah. That's good. All right, well, I think that is about all that I have for the interview. I do have 6 rapid fire questions that I usually ask to everybody.
Oh, okay.
And I left my phone over there, so we'll have to try to do this from memory. But these are just very, very much on the light side. It's just trying to get your likes, dislikes, a little bit of comedy here at the end. Actually, before we do that, do you have any projects that you're working on right now, or do you want? Would you like people to be able to find you?
Oh yeah, sure. You can reach me at the University of Oregon. I'm here at the Lillis Business Complex, and my email is just Mighell. It's Mighell @uofo.edu.
All right. We'll put that in the show notes as well. Let's see here. I better go
Oh,
get my
go
phone.
get your rapid fire questions. You do that really rapidly, or just make them up.
Or just, I know a few of them, but I don't think I know all of them. Question number 1. What is your go-to drink slash snack combination at a gas station?
What a gas station.
You're road tripping, you stop to get gas, you need a little pick-me-up. What are you getting?
I'll go with beef jerky and just water. All the other stuff's nasty.
Health
Yeah.
is a big thing for you?
Yeah.
That's good.
I used to always drink a lot of Gatorade, and then until I read the ingredients, I swore off that. And if you really like Coke, just take a penny and drop it in Coke and leave it overnight. See what happens.
Sounds like we could do a whole nother podcast on that. All right. Would you consider Honey Nut Cheerios breakfast soup?
Breakfast what?
Soup.
Well, put enough milk in there. That's what you got, isn't it?
Yeah. Does pineapple belong on pizza?
Sure, no problem.
All right.
As long as you have the Canadian bacon with it.
There we go. All right. In your opinion, who's the greatest music artist of all time?
Dave Byrne,
David
Talking
Byrne.
Heads.
Okay. All right.
I can think about it if you want.
No, that was quick.
Stop Making Sense. Best album of all time.
What is something that most people don't know about you?
I used to be a professional juggler.
Professional juggler.
Yeah.
Okay. Is that just called like a clown?
I can juggle anything. Yeah, I've worked as a clown, and I can pretty much juggle anything from knives to torches to rings to clubs, everything.
Really?
Yeah.
How many? What's the biggest number?
4. Never been quite able to do 5. Yeah.
All right. Fascinating.
And the other odd thing is I actually have 2 land speed records.
Okay, what land speed records?
Took my motorcycle down to the Bonneville Salt Flats and hooked a nitrous up to my Yamaha VMAX and broke the land speed record.
How fast was that?
The record's at 134. I actually got the bike up to 145 and then ran the nitrous a little rich and blew up the engine. That's a whole nother fun story.
Oh, that is hilarious. So you might need some of your own medical equipment if anything goes wrong in one of those situations. All right, last question here. If you could have dinner with anyone from history, who would it be?
Thomas Edison,
Okay.
one of the greatest inventors of all time.
Was he? Because somebody told me one time, well, he didn't invent everything that he had patents on. He just patented them.
Yeah, but he had full labs running full times ideas. He led those projects.
Yeah. He's a good entrepreneur.
Yeah.
He's a good entrepreneur. All right. Well, thank you for the interview, Robert. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And really good to be here and learn more about your story. This has been The Merchandise Show. If you like what you see, subscribe here on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on Instagram or TikTok. And as always, go out there and mind your own business.